Hey guys, we're going to be doing a different type of story other than an RPG horror one. Today's story will just be a D&D story, titled The Great Escape of Alain the Rogue. Let's wind the clock back to 2012. I was in college, and got invited to play my very first full-fledged D&D campaign, which was 4th edition if you care. My group had played one or two quick one-off adventures and dungeon raids, but this was going to be my first experience with a long-running adventure over multiple sessions, so I actually had to come up with a character I wouldn't be scrapping by our next game. First off, my party was huge. We had a diva named Arahana, a werewolf named Marok, who would stay in his wolf form almost exclusively, a minotaur named Nathulios, a vampiress named Carmele, and an ethereal wizard named Tim. And yes, he was that guy. A shard-mind monk named Nerum, and a scion called Vivia were our de facto party leaders, as they were the most level-headed in real life of our group. We also had a Goliath named Gothak, but his player left only after a few sessions. Now, considering our party was made up of a bunch of strange monsters and fantasy races, I decided I wanted to ground things a little bit, and create a vanilla human rogue. I brought up a random name generator, and the first name to pop up was Alain, spelt with an I. I thought it sounded hilariously mundane compared to some of the other fantasy-type names we had. Save Tim, so I kept it. And so, Alain, the dashing human rogue, was born. My whole idea behind my character was that Alain was a thief, spy, and a swindler who was good at what he did, but not nearly as good as he thought he was. In my mind, this would cause Alain to constantly overestimate his own abilities, which would hopefully lead to him screwing up in one form or another, growing as a person, and eventually becoming a trustworthy warrior. Only, that never actually ended up happening. See, we had the best kind of DM. He would never actually look at his players who were about to do something ridiculously stupid and just say they can't do it. He would let us attempt pretty much anything, then just laugh at us later when things would, more often than not, go wrong. I remember one session, when I was storming outside at the time, where we joked that the DM just enjoyed our pain when we failed something we shouldn't have attempted. The DM just stood up from his seat, cackled maniacally, and right then on cue, a loud roar of thunder shook the room. Needless to say, we rarely teased the DM afterwards due to the slim chance he might be an actual wizard. Due to our DM's very deliberate leniency, Alain winded up in plenty of wacky hijinks. He got into drunken fistfights with city guards, and on one occasion managed to actually swindle a guard into buying a simple health potion for way more than what it was actually worth. As I claimed, they were in short supply, and worth his weight in gold. And he could resell it later for double the money. And it would have worked too, if one of his guard buddies didn't smack him over the head and call him an idiot. In our Halloween game, he got roped into the D&D equivalent of a shotgun marriage to an undead bride and her family of zombie rednecks, which was also pretty fun. I also remember one particularly reckless thing I had Alain do. I waited for a particularly large boulder to come rolling at me, and I had him leap onto it and run on top of it all the way down to the bottom. I had to do a ridiculous amount of dexterity checks, and everyone thought I was suicidal. But, by God, the dice gods were on my side that day, and I made it down to the bottom. There is one adventure, however, that will always hold a special place in my heart as the most ridiculous thing I've ever attempted, and actually pulled off in any pen and paper RPG. I call it The Great Escape of Alain the Rogue. So for some brief backstory. A huge chunk of our party, including Alain, had been cursed with lycanthropy. Surprisingly enough, this was not due to the werewolf already in our party, but from a completely unrelated series of encounters. In any case, we weren't too keen on playing an entire party of werewolves, so the party was questing and looking for a cure while we still had time. We eventually ended up in the Underdark, fighting for our lives against a bunch of Myconids, which to add to this, we were still pretty low level at the time. And our wizard, Tim, got just a little bit too cocky and ended up getting knocked unconscious. Now, two things you should know about Tim before I continue. For one, he and Alain became close friends in character, as Tim was the closest thing in the party, resembling another human. For two, he had a difficult time choosing when and where to implement area of effect spells. More than once, our party would be fighting a horde of enemies, only to be fried by our own wizard. Thankfully, we hadn't had any accidental team killings, but Tim had made things difficult on a few occasions, and it was starting to get under the skins of some of our group members. Little did I know, however, that there was a team killer lurking among us, and it wasn't the wizard. Well guys, I'll be leaving the story here, as that's it for part 1. You can watch part 2 and the rest of the story over on Kunik's channel, so make sure you go check out part 2 over on his channel, and have a good one.